All right, Andres, give us some tunes.
All right, here we go.
All right, everybody, welcome to Omnic Lab. We are a podcast that focuses on the strategies in the game of Overwatch. We help you learn through trial and error in a lab-like format, even if things get a bit crazy and blow up. Sometimes we're going to be brewing up strategies on heroes, but this week we're going to be diving into our very first new category, which is map mastery. We brought on top 500 frequenting player Jardio, coming in hot to help us break down Temple of Anubis, despite having a chilly personality on Mei. What's up, Jardio?
Hello.
He's also known for more than just his Mei play. He's been playing a lot of hit skin this season in particular, and also used to play a lot of Tracer. So let's get started here. We got a little bit of things to do, but let's get past the pleasantries. My name's Rob. I'm from US, but I'm patched in from Japan this week, and joining us as always is Andres, coming in from Georgia. What's up, dude?
What's up? What's up? Super excited to be here. This episode is going to be great. We've been talking a long time about making a whole episode dedicated to map strategy. And today, Jardio is going to help us dissect Temple of Anubis. I'm very excited to jump into it.
So we're going to get into another reminder interview of who Jardio is. But before we do, we need to jump into the heads updates that we've got for you. So this here's the quick rapid fire thing. First up, we have the game night coming up for the community in our Discord is the 26th of January. If it's noon or if it's 4 a.m. on that day, you're likely going to be able to see people online to go play with. So jump in there. If you're console, if you're PC, come and hang out. We'll be running games, and anyone in all skill levels are welcome. Next up, we have a reminder that our official partner of the show, the Omnic Meta, just updated their PC meta report for January 17th. So you guys are definitely want to check that out. They've got the new year, basically the new season, all of that jazz with some frequent hero pools and maybe some advice on what you want to be looking to counter and see things that you may see on the ladder. Next up, we also have the Overwatch League Recap, which is our sister show that Andres has been producing with Blaze and Bob and Aid Marrow. They're breaking down stuff, and they just released another episode this week, so you guys can go check it out there on their feed. We also have our sponsor from I Need Peeling, or Ben, is offering a business consulting in the esports field. If you guys are aspiring as coaches, wanting to start some teams, you want to develop an app or a service, you're trying to boost your subscriber base, or you want to work in esports, you can just visit his website, topscoresolutions.com, or you can find him on Twitter at topscoreesports. And last, our show is completely supported by sponsorships through Patreon. That is basically all of the listeners out there like you are the only people supporting us and helping us get to improve the show, as well as get to BlizzCon and events that you want to meet us at. So we have special thanks to Palmy J, who is our new patron this week, as well as our top level sponsors. We have Chris DePlaya, Good DePaulo, Golden Soldier A, Great Root Bear, Kip, Lyso, Magic, Matt R, Never Clutch, Ricky Ticky, Shazir, and Tragic Zach. Thank you guys for your support. And we would not be able to do this show without you. I was even doing some budgetary stuff with Andres last week, and solo this week. I spent like 2.5 hours last night trying to see if I could even go to BlizzCon. So we really, really deeply appreciate your support. It's not cheap moving from Japan to the US in any stretch, even if it's just for a family visit, whether it's BlizzCon or not. So we really appreciate your support. So I'm going to kick it over to Andres so we can do the interview with Jardio.
Yeah, let's get right into it. All right, Jardio, before we get into Temple of Anubis, how about you tell us about what have you been up to, man? What have you been playing? I know that you've been kicking Overwatch hard and playing a ton. You've been climbing a ton. Your stream has been growing since the last time you've been in the show. How about you update us? Give us a little update.
Yeah, it's been a bit crazy. Last time I was here, I was averaging like 10 to 20 viewers on my stream. Now it's in the hundreds. A lot of support from the players in game. A lot of support from YouTube creators like CarQ, getting my name out there and stuff. I have a lot of people saying they come from YouTube and stuff like that, and other streamers. So yeah, it's been blowing up. I'm playing more Mei, more hit scan. Trying to prove myself at least on my stream to a certain extent, and it's been going really well.
I'm glad that you're still sticking to your roots. Mei is one of those characters that oscillated a little bit in the first few seasons, and she was kind of like coming back and forth in the meta. But lately, we haven't seen much of her. I think that the only thing I've seen of Mei in the Overwatch League, it's been like Soul Dynasty playing her in Junkertown a couple of times, but that's about it. What's your experience with Mei on the ladder these days?
It really hasn't changed in my personal viewpoint of it. At least after season 2, she kind of fell off. But I feel like even season 3 through 7 and 8 now, she still has that same type of capability. She hasn't been crazy good or worse since, but I've been able to play her just fine on the ladder in certain situations. I'm figuring out that some heroes might be better in certain situations, which is why I've been playing a lot more hit scan than I used to. But I think Mei's still pretty viable in certain situations.
Nice. What hit scan have you been playing?
A lot of Tracer, a lot of McCree, and Soldier. Recently, in the past few weeks, I've been spamming McCree because that's one of those heroes that, like, if you want to be considered a good hit scan player, you have to be good at McCree. So.
Yeah. That's like your proving ground, right? Like your standard, right. Your measuring stick. Can you play McCree?
Yep.
Have you seen Pine in the Overwatch League?
I have not. I didn't even hear of Pine until like yesterday. But every time I play McCree, people were like, "Are you trying to be Pine? Are you Pine?"
Okay,
like, what?
Listen. If you're trying to like practice McCree and stuff, you gotta watch him play some stuff in the Overwatch League because he is
apparently
doing
insane.
A clinic on how to wreck it with McCree.
Yeah, apparently
he basically gets a 4 kill and just like shrugs it off like it's nothing.
He doesn't just shrug it off; he dabs it off. Boom.
Oh, dead memes.
All right. That being said, we've seen what you've been up to. Let's jump right into it. Let's go into Temple of Anubis. Let's start with some general strategy. I want to start off the map with the layout. What do you think when you go into Temple of Anubis as far as hero terms go? When you're thinking about how do you approach Temple of Anubis? What's the layout? What heroes might thrive? Is it an open map? Is it a closed map? Is it lots of chokes? Like what comes to mind when you see Temple of Anubis? First of all, 2CP map. We all know the reputation, but I'm gonna pass it on to you, Jardio, to kick it off. When you go into Temple of Anubis, what's the first thing that you think?
It depends if I'm on attack or defense. When I'm on attack, it's definitely right off the bat a close engagement, since a vast majority of the time people hold that high ground that's right there in front of the choke. Got 3 decisions: left, middle, and right. Typically, you go mid or left. Personally, I tend to not opt for the Tracer, just because that they have that high ground. It's hard to get on a flat elevation where Mei really excels, and I'll typically go Tracer because dive seems to be pretty effective. Because there's a lot of dive heroes that can quickly get to that mid high ground that people like to play a lot. They're usually clustered up. It's easy to get picks and such. Defense wise, you're holding that high ground. You're looking to control the choke a lot and control the right choke. Typically, teams don't really go on the left-hand side, since it's pretty risky to try and get that high ground because it's also pretty tight in that corner. I know Orisa is a big part of the meta since her shield buff. People have been playing Orisa a lot, and especially on Anubis, especially that first point, people will definitely be running Orisa, which you have to think about because shield break, that brings in the hog. If you're running Orisa, you want if the enemy team has an Orisa, you're going to want to hog for the shield break. Unless you're running dive, you can play around the shield. So it's a lot of close engagements, quick engagements that you're looking to try and get those kills.
I think you hit it right, the nail right in the head. Temple of Anubis, I would like calling it Choke Town because it's just choke after choke after choke. It's like a series of chokes, and even the passageways and the doors are all like this little mini choke points that makes it so that heroes that are very spammy, like Junkrat, for example, or
Orisa
heroes like Orisa, yeah, where you can put a shield and cover yourself, but keep spamming those close encounters, those corridors, all those little nooks and crannies. All those heroes tend to be really good. Pharah, for example, can be also pretty effective in Temple of Anubis. Even Reaper. Reaper, out of all the heroes, doesn't thrive in a lot of maps, but Reaper does a great job in Temple of Anubis because of what you said. These little chokes make up for a ton of close encounters, and I feel like you can approach the map a couple different ways, right? You can set up a composition that can completely avoid the choke. So if you're attacking, for example, you want mobile heroes like Diva, Winston, Genji, Widowmaker, heroes that don't rely so much on having to go through the choke and engage, the honest way, but can kind of cheat their way around. I can go around these little nooks and crannies. It has a ton of little shortcuts that you can take in the map as well. So you're right. It favors very close encounters, and heroes that have a lot of mobility or that can close those chokes, that can guard those chokes or spam them can also be very effective. Do you want to add anything over here, Rob?
I was going to ask Jardio to maybe talk a little bit about the verticality and the sight lines on the map, in particular, especially with attackers and defenders kind of approaching them from different perspectives, especially with Widowmaker becoming a primary concern with the barriers. Basically, like, Widow doesn't try to shoot into the barriers. She basically works around people being out of position with them. And if somebody's trying to engage or counter engage, then they leave the safety of their zone, they leave the safety of their barrier, and now they're exposed because Widow has just a shooting gallery from this one long sight line to the point almost every time. So you want to speak a little bit to that, especially with because I know you play a lot of Mei, and that's kind of why we wanted to bring you in, because this is kind of Mei's playground. Like, this is where you can basically zone out in entire spam zones for a moment in time to cap a point or to deny half the team. So why don't you talk a little bit about verticality here?
Okay, so heroes that don't have a super amount of verticality, even Mei, compared to someone like Genji or Widow, where they can get on the high ground, typically suffer a little bit more. Like you said, there's a shooting gallery. So if you're playing Widow or you're playing Genji, you're spamming the shurikens. It's easy to get shots in. For someone like Mei, she excels in flat elevation because it's easy to headshot. And Anubis, the first point on that mid high ground, it's hard to capitalize on it because, especially with an Orisa, you either have to fully commit on the left side, which they can easily rotate, and you can't really commit on the right side unless you're fully committing into walking up the stairs, going through that doorway, in which, like you said, it's a bunch of chokes and stuff. So it's very easy to take a lot of damage. Playing an immobile hero is harder to capitalize on moving up on the high ground because of the spam of the Junkrat and stuff like that, which is typically why I play someone like Tracer, where she can just weave in and out. Doesn't really have to play. Someone like Tracer doesn't really get the low ground disadvantage because she can move through the low ground and take the high ground without taking a lot of damage and something like that. So.
Yeah, she can avoid the choke point completely. She doesn't have to go through it. I think that, speaking to the verticality of the map, this is a map that offers a ton of verticality, and actually the sight lines are quite awesome for heroes like Widowmaker, like Soldier 76, like Pharah. Heroes that can really abuse the range. Zenyatta can also really abuse this type of map. I think point 1 or point A and point B both offer significant high ground advantages. Widowmakers tend to thrive in this map, and we've seen some amazing Widowmaker play in the Overwatch League from a ton of teams. It's just a hero that tends to do really well because she can perch up on all these little choke points, and the map itself has enough high ground all around that the Widow can freely jump from one place to the other and change her position accordingly to what the defense or the attack needs at that moment. So it's it's a very friendly environment for Widowmakers or heroes that can really get up there in both points. And in both points, this can be really abused. Let's talk a little bit more in depth in the map. Let's maybe jump into specifically point 1. And I want to see it from both perspectives, the attacker and the defensive perspective. How about we talk about defense first? I think it would set a little better framework. Let's go into the mentality of defenders. Point A. I think there's a couple different points where you can defend in point A. The most popular and the one where most people set up even at the lower levels is the traditional center of that little elevation. I don't know, how would you guys call that little spot? The balcony, the platform, right in front of the first choke of Temple of Anubis, and you can go up the very first stairs, and there's a little bridge connecting point A to the first choke point. There's an elevation right there. That's where most people set up, and I think that's kind of like the basic. Let's defend, let's spam the choke point. And it works really well, especially with teams that are not very adept at covering themselves or going through the choke or avoiding the choke whatsoever, fighting different sightlines. It's a good spot for beginners, but it tends to fall as teams get a little better, and it's a spot that can be easily abused. Do you guys want to talk maybe about how you can defend from there and maybe why it's good, bad?
I think it's pretty good. Even in the higher tiers, ladder isn't so coordinated. Even in top 500, I've had full top 500 games with the coordination isn't even great. Walking through the choke against a spam, because typically teams like to run spam every single time, Junkrat and Orisa and stuff like that. And it's really effective because of all the chokes and stuff like that.
What's a composition that you would think on defense would work, for example, in this point?
Typically the Orisa, the Hog, Junkrat, pick like Tracer, just to put pressure on if they do decide to go to the sides, Tracer can easily maneuver on the point, on that first point, to get there quickly. Hero like, and I feel like a lot of heroes are actually viable, simply because they can just abuse the choke.
A lot of heroes are viable, but I think there are certain essential things that you need when you're at that choke point. You at least want a shield hero, either a Reinhardt or an Orisa, like you said. Preferably an Orisa because of the nature of what you're trying to do. When you're setting up that close to the choke point, what you're trying to do is set up a huge choke where you can spam as much as you can and make it super threatening for any team or any hero to go through it, to the point where just passing by might kill you because of all of the bullets that are flying at you at that moment. So the shield is nice and necessary because it gives you the advantage there. You can actually stand your ground, shoot as many bullets, bombs, or anything that you need into that choke. Then you want a hero that can actually spam that choke point, or several heroes that can spam that choke point. So Orisa, again, a great hero, gets you the shield and gets you the spam. Junkrat can do the job. Zenyatta can actually be another great hero to spam that choke point. You just get the Discord orb and constant orbs just being swatted at Tracers and Genjis or anyone trying to go through there. Any Pharahs trying to spam at you, you can discord them. Obvious picks would obviously be Soldier 76. Roadhog can be very effective in there too, since you can grab people trying to pass through the choke point with your hook, and as well as spam the hook, spam any shields that are trying to get to you. Mei, ding ding ding, can actually be a great hero too. You can block the choke point with your wall and help with certain level of spam. Mei's not the greatest one for long, medium distance spam, but she can throw some icicles in there. You know,
You get a headshot.
yeah, every little counts. So that defense is very strong because of that. It gives you just an honest, straight, I'm going to spam the hell out of you, shoot as many bullets as I can. We're in a range that is close enough that you might die, and we are clustered away enough, especially if we have shields, to do it. Let's talk about a few other defending points, though, because that one is the obvious. But where are other defending points that are effective in this map, in this point?
The back high ground. I don't know what to call it.
It's like that back tower on the far left as an attacker.
Yeah. Back left or back right. Typically, back left being from attacking, looking top left. I know Widow is a popular pick on the map. A lot of Widows will play there on defense. If you're going to run Widow on defense, she's typically standing there because, like you said, the map's super open. It's like a shooting gallery for both sides. They can capitalize on the high ground. I know I've seen a few teams, few games where the whole setup will be on that high ground with the Orisa, with the soldier, with everything. We're probably one of the two places, the popular places.
That tower is actually quite nice, and you're right. Sometimes you even see the Orisas and everyone posting up there, and we're talking about it's probably the tallest tower on the defender side. If you're standing on the point, looking towards the archway, it's gonna be on your right side. Like down below, there's a health pack that you can get. Is that like that little opening right in front of the point, and then you can be on top of that tower. That tower can be really great because it basically overlooks the entire point. It overlooks the choke point. So if you have heroes that have enough range, you can still get some spam or at least some shots into that choke as they're coming in. And more importantly, though, you're not as easily accessible. If you post up in there, especially if your team posts up in there, and I think that this is a more advanced defense. We've seen this defense a lot in the Overwatch League, and I particularly like this point because you make the attacker basically commit to you. If they want to get to you, they have to go really far in. They're not anywhere close
you or the point
to safety.
Well.
Yeah, and then you're very close to the point, which also allows you to watch it for any flanker, like any tracer or any sneaky guy trying to backcap you. Characters like Widowmaker can still be very effective in this choke point and can have a look at the choke and at the backside of the choke. When you're standing in the platform that we're talking about in the beginning, in the normal defense spot, this spot is a spot that can get overrun very easily. If you have characters like Diva, Winston, Genji, all in the attacking team, they literally are a dash, a jump, or a rocket booster away from you. And it's very easy for them, if they coordinate something, to jump you. And like you said, it's still a good defensive spot. You can still spam the hell out of them and kill them before they get to you. But regardless, they can get to you very easily, and you can never guarantee that your Zenyatta or your Mercy might survive that, or your soldier might get picked off. You might still get scattered, like a Pharah can still throw a concussive blast in there and knock you off, and suddenly your team is all out of position. And you're very close to the choke at that point. Defending further back gets rid of that liability and gives you a better look at the backside. So I've seen teams defend on both parts, depending on what they're trying to do. The first one is a little more aggressive defense, more spammy. You're controlling the choke a little better. The further one is a little more of a respectful defense. You're trying to avoid the dive. You're trying to take advantage of heroes with longer range. And yeah, it gives you access to the back of the point where you can fall back a little bit easier. Anything you guys want to add over here? I feel like I'm ranting about this high ground position.
There's two things that I wanted to highlight on this high ground, and you guys can feel free to, cut me off or jump in here anytime. But on the high ground, it's like on the far left side. So if you're attacking and you see the point, you look up on the left, you see the big tower with the two little archways to the health pack below. But on the high ground, it's not like it's just a flat tower. There's two almost like rectangular pillars that are in the middle region. So there's like a little space in between the choke point and that. There's also a little point in between the two pillars, and then there's like another pillar, like area on the back before you can jump down to the staircase at the very back left corner of the point. And a lot of widows, even if they don't have a barrier there, are abusing the sightlines and using these natural coverage to stay up there. And a lot of you in the lower tiers or people just that don't play this map very often or watch Overwatch League aren't really aware of how you can get, Roadhog, Zenyatta, Orisa, and non-mobile or non-verticality heroes up there, and they jump on the Mei wall. That's how you get them up there. So they're either start on the defense, they'll get a Mei, they'll get everybody up there, Mei will run back to spawn and switch to whatever else they want. Or, like Jardio, you just stay on the Mei, you stay up there. So I've noticed that is one of the big keys for that, and one of the main weaknesses as well. Is that because you have non-mobile heroes requiring something of them to get to that position in the first place, once you deal with this attack in some way, shape, or form, it's a lot harder to get reset in that zone. So if you can break it once, you're going to be setting up yourself to be better off on the following push. So even if you die with what they call a dry push, just to get some ult charge or just to push people off as your main priority, regardless of if you die or get kills or frags or whatever, getting people off the high ground is advantageous. And go ahead, Jardio.
And when the defending team comes back from spawn, it's good even if you have the low ground, even if you're on point, because they have to go through the chokes. They're the ones in the chokes, the main doors to get into point A or the staircase on the right side. They're very, very small, easily spammable and such.
Right. And even if the other team is running, the defensive team is running a Symmetra, it's not a good idea. I mean, I don't know if they will, but it's not a good idea in general to put the teleporter up there in most cases because it's super easy to shoot down or spam down from any stretch. And so a lot of the times you're going to see the teleporter go before you even approach the main choke or the staircase. It's going to be there, or it's going to be in that very, very far back, like little alcove loop U-shaped room on the back side of the point.
That's usually
where I'll see teleporters.
A good one, or right behind the point on the other side. Symmetra's another great hero for defense on this map. If there's any map where she actually can do some good stuff, it's definitely this one. There's so many close encounters and places where she can place turrets and her teleporter. One thing that they're asking over here in chat, and Calagon is asking if people should expect on the defense eventually for point A to fall, and if there's any spawn advantage. I would say in point A, the attackers have a slight bit of advantage. It's not as significant as in some other maps. I think that the defenders have a good chance in here, especially because getting back to the point is a straight shot, and a lot of heroes can really abuse that, like Winston or Pharah or Reinhardt. Widowmaker can do that too. But the attackers, I think, still have a slight little edge over here. So if you're still getting picks in the fight, if your team dies, but you're still getting picks constantly, eventually you can snowball that in Temple of Anubis, at least in point A. Point B is a different story, but we'll get to that one in a little bit. Let's go into the attacker's position before we jump into point B, because I think there's some good points to discuss as an attacker attacking into point A. We've discussed maybe a couple of positions where the defending team could be. Usually you will encounter them, where we said, in that platform right in front of the choke, spamming the hell out of you, and you're going to have to figure out a couple of things. How do you get past this point? Do you use a shield and allow your teammates to go through and then continue doing that, trying to prevent the spam and getting through that? Or do you use heroes that avoid the choke altogether and maybe can act all at once? What's your preference here, Jardio?
Personally, as a coordinated team, I'd prefer dive. Typically, you get a couple kills. Even if you lose the fight, you still have a little bit more of an advantage than you did to start with. Playing, but in ladder, it's pretty uncoordinated. Playing a slower comp can be more advantageous. Just getting to that, just having people stay alive. That's the hardest thing, because getting staggered is such a big part of the game and this map in general, because it just takes one person to die from all this spam, and the push is kind of faulty. And once one person dies, and then it takes a while for the rest of your team to die, and maybe you're just waiting for that other person to come back, and another person dies strictly from the spam. So it's very hard to get a full setup for a full push and commit. Whereas in dive, typically if one person dies, the rest of your team, or one or two dies, and then typically the rest of your team will die pretty quickly. You can set up a new push. It's another quick engagement that you can take. It doesn't take that much time to set up. You can really and capitalize on all that time taking more team fights and giving your team more chances to win a team fight.
I definitely agree with you here. I think the chokes and what makes Anubis sometimes very frustrating, especially for newer players, is that the chokes can randomly kill you very easily. You just peek for a second and 2-3 bullets from 2 or 3 different people just hit you all at once and bam, you're dead. Like a Junkrat bomb hits you and Soldier gets 2 shots on you, Orisa got 1 bullet and you're dead. And the longer it takes you to cross this choke, the more that you increase your chances of this randomness happen. And like you said, in Anubis, it's very easy to get staggered, especially for teams that are not trying to be coordinated or that are trying to kind of just stand around the choke. One of the worst things that you can do in this map is fight on that choke point. If you're just spamming and cross-firing with the defending team on the choke point, you are literally doing exactly what the defense wants. They want you to stay on the other side of that choke point and just receive their bullets so they can charge their ultimates and they can maybe get a few picks on you here and there. So the worst thing that you can do is just stand there and crossfire at them. You want to do 2 things. Cross that choke point really fast using your shield or whatever hero. You can even use your tank as cover. I think that sometimes people don't realize this too much, but as long as you're walking behind your tank, he's soaking damage for you. It could be a Roadhog, a Zarya, a D.Va without Matrix, whoever it is. As long as you're walking behind them, you're relatively safe. Things can still get you, but use your shield, use your beefy heroes. If you're a hero with mobility, definitely use your ability. If you're a Genji with dash, dash through. If you're a Tracer, blink through. If you are Lucio, definitely save your speed boost when you're crossing the choke. Don't just speed boost your team right off the gate, and when you get to the choke, be like, oh, sorry guys, it's on cooldown. Don't be that guy. So you guys get the point. Cross the choke as fast as you can. Build a plan with your team, even if it's not a coordinated team, if it's a pug, just at the beginning, just say, let's go right, guys, or let's all go right. Quick, or something. Just offer some sort of coordination there because you want your entire team to cross that as fast as possible. Rob, you want to say anything here?
Yeah, there was one attacking approach that a lot of Genjis and Widowmakers I've seen use, which is when you're coming in on the left side as an attacker underneath the top archway, not the small archway to get to point, but the first one, there is that little room with the health pack. And then there's the second room, like then you can get on that mid ground, I guess you could say, where most people are holding. A lot of people, especially lower than Diamond, I've noticed are not really ever looking up unless there's a Pharah. But there's these little tiny half circle windows that are actually big enough for any hero to get through. So if you're a flanking Pharah, if you're a Widowmaker with a grappling hook, or a Genji, or a Hanzo with wall climb, you can climb the wall, get up to that little thing, and you can jump behind point B or point A. You can even get up to that high ground that we mentioned on the defensive side, and you can like disrupt them there. And you actually will see quite a bit of Widowmakers try to get what's called crossfire, firing perpendicular to where the other teams are set up, just to disrupt them. Not even trying to get a kill, but just let them know they're there. They can go jump and kill her, but what happens is it splits up the team, and then the rest of your team can take advantage of it. So you have to kind of weigh these options and also kind of see where the coordination lies with your team. But
no, absolutely. And I'm glad that you mentioned those little windows because as an attacker, once you're past that choke point, I think that should be your main mentality. Try to avoid choke points at all costs, especially if the defense is playing on that little platform. That is basically what they're banking on. They're banking on you using those little chokes and spamming the hell out of you. So the best thing that you can do is avoid the chokes really fast. Use a composition that is a little on the faster side. Like Reinhardt can be okay, but without a Lucio, sometimes what ends up happening is the Reinhardt just standing covering the chokes and not being able to fire back at the shield while he takes an insane amount of damage. So unless you have a composition that can break shields really fast, Reinhardt can struggle. Other heroes though, like Genjis or Tracers, Widowmakers, what they can do is start surrounding the defense. The best thing you can do is avoid the chokes, keep going, use the little nooks and crannies like you were saying, Rob, those little windows up there. And especially if they're setting up on the middle platform, they're very easy to be surrounded, and then you can start attacking them from the backside and from defense side, start poking and start making them break their formation. Hopefully a few of the heroes will come and chase you or drop off of the high ground. Maybe you can get to point and start contesting point to make somebody have to come back and stand there and get to you. What you're trying to do is basically break their formation, try to find picks from the sidelines, and definitely don't play into those chokes. Anything else you like doing here in attack, Jardio?
I think that's pretty good coverage.
There's two more things that I could ask you about, Jardio, if you wouldn't mind.
One
is flank routes, especially on the right side, because you have the main choke, and then you have two upper tiers of where you can jump in, right? You got the main up staircase to go back to the catwalk, or you've got the second high ground where you can go on the very far back right side of the point. And then the other topic besides flank routes that I wanted to talk about for Anubis especially is the X factor of Sombra play. So I wanted to see if you could kind of highlight those two things and anything that you've noticed in a lot of your games here.
Typically, I try to avoid the second high ground where you keep going up the stairs on the right side. The high ground up there, it's too far for maximum effectiveness. At least for someone like Tracer, where she doesn't have range. You can tap the point. I actually like that, like tapping the point, having a couple heroes turn around on that platform that they typically sit on while my team engages. Kind of split up the focus, split up the damage. But most of the time, I will go on the one you were talking about, where you go up the stairs and you take a left. You have line of sight of the platform on the right side, and I'll attack from that angle. So they have either the team is they're attacking the team from straight on, they're jumping on the point, or they're focused on the right hand side while you are to their left and pinch them in there. At least for Tracer, because she doesn't have any verticality, you pretty much don't have a choice. You can't really capitalize on attacking the team from the front, especially if they have a shield. So you're forced to go on the left or the right-hand side. So I like the right-hand side, the middle-hand side, and pitching them from there. I think that's a good strategy.
And let's talk about the right-hand side.
Engage on the other side, right?
Let's talk about that little area to close out the discussion on point A, because we haven't touched on the right-hand side of Anubis too much, but it is a very important area both for attack and defense. If you're an attacker, once you get past the first choke, if you go to the right-hand side, go all the way up the stairs, you find a room with a big health pack and access to a back balcony that overlooks the choke point. As an attacker, this is prime position. This is a great location to be. And as an attacker, having your team up there, if you can get them, all of them or a big portion of them up there, is a great thing for you, especially if you get people with range. For example, a Widowmaker or a Tracer is a great hero to go up there as well, since she can start contesting the point. If things get hairy when she pulls somebody, she can just recall and she's back into the big health pack up there. She's already made one hero at least get out of position and stir things up a little bit. You can also overlook the choke points. So if the defending team decides to go all the way back and defend on the point, you actually can have high ground on them while you're shooting at them, allowing your Mercy to maybe go back and forth, for example, getting out of danger and still going to help your Rhine or whoever's down there contesting the point. So
It's a great spot for
It's-
Soldier Mercy.
it's
I
a great
love that
spot.
high
It's a
ground.
great spot. And it's also a spot that the defense has to really keep in mind. I've seen sometimes some defenders go back there, like Widowmakers can sometimes go back there since they'll still have some range from that point. But it's a point that is important for defense because if you see the attackers trying to take over this point, it's a red alert. And you should try to either stop them on their tracks as they're going in, or if they're able to take it, you should really find a way to maybe make him lose the high ground before you even try contesting the point back. Because if you contest the point while the attackers have control of that area, you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage. You're probably making yourself a sitting duck to some hit scan hero up there, or a Junkrat, or some sort of huge threat that you don't want no part of. And that's the last thing I wanted to say about that. Anything else you guys wanted to add here?
I think especially in ladder, attacking on that high ground is a really good spot, but it has to be a hero that holds their own. If your team is not fully committed up there, because you can't really go up there as a soldier or McCree by yourself. It's way too risky, and it's just not worth it. But someone that can hold their own, Widow with the grapple and the range. Even Genji just building Blade up there because typically they have their shields pointed not towards you, so it's easy to get ult charge from that position. So either you get your team to commit on that side, which can be really helpful, but in ladder specifically, it's really difficult to do that, to get your whole team to really want to do it and to execute it correctly to get up there. But yeah.
And I've seen Sombra love that health pack because she just goes back into that room and will like contest point. It's a little bit easier, I think, for her than it is for Tracer, for example. Even though she's not trying to abuse the high ground, she's trying to abuse the flexibility of going back there for the health pack more than anything.
Absolutely. All right, you guys want to jump into point B?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Point B of Anubis. Again, choke down. This point has more chokes than you will ever want in any map to have. And especially point B can be incredibly frustrating for newer players because it can be a point that is very, very hard to just enter by itself. It only has 3 small doorways, and thank God there's 3 now, because back in the day there only used to be 2 little doorways. They added a 3rd one just because it was so hard to get inside the temple itself. But again, choke down. So all these heroes like Reaper, Widow still works, but Zenyatta, Lucio works too in this small point, just because there's so many places you can climb to and spam your little goo orbs.
Goo.
Mei can actually be a great hero as well as Junkrat in this last point. You can block people off, and you have small corridors. Everything that Mei wants basically in this map. One hero that I want to highlight in this point, though, both for attack and defense, is Sombra. Sombra can be quite an effective hero in this map, and mainly is because of the layout of this last point. There's a very juicy, straight up, big health pack, the biggest health pack you can find, right below the point.
It's huge.
It's huge. Right below point B of Anubis, in that little corridor trench that's like in front of it, there's a huge health pack, and controlling this health pack can be huge for your team. And I think that just that health pack being there, it's good enough to sometimes have a Sombra on your team. Not to mention that she can also provide a lot of spam, and EMPs in close quarters can be super deadly. I'm gonna throw it to you, Jardio. What do you think of point B, Anubis? What sticks up in your head when you think about it?
Mei. I genuinely believe that Mei could possibly be the best hero for point B Anubis. And the fact that I see pro teams not run Mei on point B blows my mind, because I think if I look at my statistics for that map on that point, it is extremely high, because that's one of my go-to picks. I was like, even point A, I'll run hit scan, let someone else Junkrat or something. But point B, I really think Mei excels a lot because of all the chokes, and even you can create chokes with your wall where there's not chokes just because of the map design. The point and the pillars and the back side of the point, you can create a wall perpendicular to it, so it'll create a choke and completely block off part of the point, so you can just create a choke there. Her stalling capabilities on that point, and it's similar to Sombra, where she can just get so much value off of that part of the map, just because the way it's designed, how fat the positioning of the health pack, you can capitalize on it really well. And similar to Mei, where her ult usage on that part of the map is really, really good, just because it's so difficult to avoid a well-placed ultimate like Blizzard because of just the map design.
Yeah, not to mention her stalling capabilities in a point like point B Anubis.
Oh yeah, for Mei,
Yeah,
or Sombra. Yeah, for Mei, yeah. And I see a lot where especially pro teams, they'll swap to Mei for the stall. Whereas if you're already running Mei, typically you'll have Blizzard, or you'll get Blizzard relatively quickly, since you've already been playing her, have a the ult charge for it and whatnot. And the ult itself can not only stall the point for such a long amount of time, it can get you kills, and it can win you the team fight, it can win you the game. Her ultimate's really important, and on a map like that, getting ultimate is very easy because you just spam headshot level. Especially point B, it's very elevated compared to point A, where there's a lot of different elevations.
right.
Point B is pretty straightforward. If either you get a lot of ult charge on the straight on, or if they go on the right side, you get less ult charge, but you get more value off of your wall, because it's literally that dark corridor.
The cave. I like calling it the cave.
And that's the only entry. If you're in there, that's the only way you get through, and you're not getting through unless you have some sort of verticality.
There's something that I really want to highlight with the opinion of Mei being good beyond why they're not doing it in an Overwatch League right now, is the staying power of the meta for this. Like, a lot of people, when they look at meta, they're looking at hero pick rates, right? They're looking for like what's good and what's this and what's the team strats and what are the team comps and why is this hero good based off of what their kit does and what other people's kits do. But as you will see, if you watch Overwatch League or you watch professional or high tier play in Grandmaster and Top 500, is it ceases to be about the hero picks and what people are good at, and it tends to be more dictated by how people are playing well on their given best heroes in the environment of specific maps. So like you said, Jardio, like Mei has been and continues to be good on this map, whether she is weak or strong, based purely upon the layout.
Exactly.
And we've been saying that many times, but I wanted to like make sure that we kind of zero in on the emphasis on hero strength based on map structure, verticality, and overall hero ability kits. That's what makes heroes strong. It's like how they work together, what their kits do, and how they interact with a certain map with their team. And 2CP, basically all of these different game modes of payload or capturing a point or holding a point for control, even though hybrid is technically a fourth map, it's just a fusion of two of those things. Those are how you want to approach mastery of your hero. You can say, okay, I am really good at this hero, and here's my overall win rate. But what you can really do and see how well you're progressing on your heroes is see what are your win rates on specific maps. And maybe you want to pick a different hero for a different map and try to master them. Or maybe you just want to get better at your given hero that you really like playing on that map style. And even particular maps within that style operate very differently. I mean, you see people that are like super good at Ilios, and then they just tank on like Lijiang. Or, I mean, a simple example, Jardio's talking about Anubis here being really, really good for Mei. Not every control point's great for Mei. Like, I mean, he even said just between point A and point B, it's like night and day.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Really quickly over here, let's set up a little framework for attackers and defenders. Let's start with the attackers. Let's start with defenders, actually. I like starting with defenders because it's easier to understand what you're going to be facing as an attacker this way. For Point B Anubis, I think there are two landmarks that are important in this map. One is the frontal wall that separates basically the attacker side from the inside of the temple. This wall is super important. It only has 3 entrances, and defenders should be super aware of this wall, where attackers are, and where they are going in through it. Which one of the doors are they basically going through? There's a couple ways that you can do this. People who are standing on the point, like a Zenyatta, or maybe your shield tank like Orisa or Reinhardt, can have usually a good vantage point seeing this. Also, the wall itself has an archway at the top that I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with. You can go up there with heroes like Widowmaker or Winston and D.Va. It has a little kind of like circle in the back where you can also perch up. Yeah, it's like a balcony almost where you can like post up. As a defender, I think it's particularly important to have somebody up there, whether it be a Winston or a Reaper or your D.Va or your Widowmaker, your Genji, and not necessarily somebody who's spamming outside, but just somebody who's like watching out, because it's an archway you don't want to concede to the attacker team, right? You don't want a Widowmaker from the attacker team standing in there. You don't want a Genji or other nasty stuff sitting up there and having the high ground advantage on you. Pharahs tend to do this a lot, for example, where they'll just post up in that perch and fire at you. So if you already have somebody up there kind of watching out, you have the advantage there. And also, the person who's sitting up there has primetime view of the main entrance of the temple and primetime view of the right-hand side of the entrance of the temple. So that person can very quickly fall down and start spamming on whoever's coming in, or quickly redirect themselves to where the fight is needed. And if you really need to, it's not very far from the actual point, so you can just fall back to the point. I think that perch up there is very important for defense. Is something that you should be watching out. If you can have a hero up there in preparation for the attack, I think it's important too, as well as maybe some heroes back at the point. What other points in this on defense that you guys like setting up on different heroes, or that are like staples in it?
I know for someone like Widow, I don't know how to explain it. It's on, if you're defending, it's on the far back left hand side. There is a sort of like a rectangular shape high ground. I don't even know what to call it.
It's like a blocked off pillar, right? Like a pillar that doesn't go all the way up. Is that what you're talking about?
It's so let's say you're attacking and you have the main doorway in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And you go on the right hand side and you look up. There's a
oh yeah,
some sort of like,
oh, I know what you're talking about.
It's like scaffolding or something.
It's like a scaffolding type of.
It's like a column. Yeah, it's like a destroyed column that lingers in there. It's like in the very edge of the map.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of Widows, because going up main, anyone can shoot you from the point. But going up there, you have pillars too. There's a lot of pillars where you can maneuver around to block the damage and block LOS. So they'll try and take advantage of that. It gives you more sights on the left hand side, the deep left hand side of the point if you're attacking. High ground specifically, I'd say that point and the high ground right above the doors is the two most popular ones. And I think the high ground above the doors is extremely good simply because of that circular structure that you can.
Right side as a defender, left side as an attacker.
Right.
Behind the catwalk. Yeah.
Yeah, because if that wasn't there, you would be exposed, but you can fall back into that area and recover, and it'll give you sights to the other side. So you have both sides. You either have the sight advantage over the inside the point or right under you, or outside the point towards their spawn. So you can put pressure on the front line, put pressure on their back line, and stuff like that. So that's really important.
Yeah, agreed. Another thing that I want to point out on defender side, when you're standing on the point, there's usually heroes who like standing on the point and it's viable, right? Like you want your Zenyatta staying close to back there. You want your main tank like an Orisa or your Reinhardt to be kind of closing that gap and sometimes being a little further back. But one thing that I see, especially at the lower ranks, is people standing in the dead center of the point and just kind of like shooting and spamming from there. And this is very dangerous. I think that just standing there and shooting is basically making yourself a target, if I may. You're very easy to jump. You're very easy to shoot at if you're going up against a Pharah or a Widow, and instead you should be using a lot of the available terrain that there is. There's a brick wall on the right hand side. There's the pillars like we've talked about. Behind the point, there's actually like a little corridor, a little tunnel or like back room that goes behind the statue, behind the point. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That is very useful too for defenders. Going back there and weaving in between shots. If you're a Zenyatta, this is a little nook and cranny that you're very familiar with, I'm sure. Also using things like the cave to hide. You don't want to be standing just in the center of the point. And this is something that I see a lot of people do, just kind of sitting there. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm just going to go Widowmaker and shoot them all because they're just standing there.
Yeah, the worst is when there's no barrier and they're still standing there.
There's also the little the trench with the health pack they were talking about at the beginning with Sombra that you can also fall to and use the health pack there. So there's a lot of places you can actually hide as a defender in this point B and that you can use to your advantage. Basically, the thing is, don't make yourself an easy target, especially in this point. It's a point where it's easily stallable as defense, and we should mention this. As defense, this point is hard to lose. And as long as you're giving it your all, and even when you have lost a team fight,
playing Mei,
it's very advisable to switch to heroes that can stand a little bit by themselves, like Mei, like Diva, like Tracer, Winston to a lesser extent. Lucio can be great on this map just because he can kind of wall ride infinitely in point B and make himself
Moira's
really hard to get
as well with the orbs coverage of the whole point. Basically,
Moira can be good in this point. But these type of heroes can be great as stall heroes. And once you've lost that team fight, even switching to them, even if you're like your Zenyatta, if you don't have Transcendence and you're nowhere near close to getting your Transcendence, you might as well just switch to a Mei or a Tracer or even a Diva.
Reaper.
And they get back up there, try to get a kill or two, and start snowballing slowly back in your favor. It's a viable strategy in this point.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jardio. Sorry.
I was going to say, well, I guess I'll save it for the attacking side, right? Because we're going to still talk about the attack.
Let's jump on attack right now. Actually,
we can jump to that.
Yeah, that's a good point to do it.
Okay. I know, and there are picks to counter that type of stagger, in which Mei is actually a really good one. I also like Mei on attack. I think she's really good for that as well. Because you're able to wall off the spawn doors where they're coming from, and someone like Mei, she excels in 1v1s or even 1v2s where there's not a ton of pressure on her. So as they're coming out, it's a simple freeze. Or if they start getting frozen, they have to burn their defensive cooldown immediately, as opposed to when they're actually stalling the point, trying to survive. So if a Moira is coming out and you start freezing her, she instantly fades. But now she's on the point without fade, or a Tracer. You can even start freezing a Tracer and she's forced to use her blinks, forced to use her recall, and stuff like that. Or the really tanky heroes. You freeze Diva, she can't Matrix, decreases her survivability by a lot. The monkey jumps in. Once he's frozen, if your team focus fires him, he's dead. Or even when he's in alt form, when you focus him, the 1.5 second freeze or whatever the freeze time is feels like infinity to that Winston, because even though he has 1,000 HP or whatnot, he'll take a bunch of damage, especially if they're getting staggered and you have enough teammates to apply the pressure on each hero that's coming out. I think I love Mei. She excels.
I really like running the
Mei
Mei alongside like a Reaper, for example, because you basically can just abuse the freeze. Like
oh yeah, especially on tanks. Yeah, for sure.
Especially like if they're running dive. I feel like it's like every time that you run into 2CP maps in particular, even I would even venture to say a good chunk of the control points, the more popular like Diva Winston gets, the better and better Roadhog and Mei get to issue as counters. Yeah. Because they're basically just like high damage barrier doming things, and then you're removing almost all of the value Diva has in her entire kit by just using the freeze, because she has no way to interact against it defensively.
Especially the new Diva
range,
where she plays aggressively because of the missiles and she can shoot while flying. So if the Diva decides to play aggressively, you can. It's easier for you to freeze her.
She's usually out of position at that point.
Yeah, you don't even have to have the pressure on you as playing Mei to get a kill. You just have to basically provide the utility of the walls and the freeze, and you're good.
Exactly.
One thing that I will add to this, and you mentioned it too, it's all about the focus fire as well. You want to make them bust their defensive cooldowns as fast as possible. This kind of stuff that will keep them stalling for a long time. You want to get rid of that as fast as possible, but then you also need your team to be focus firing them. I think a common mistake that I see is once you've won the team fight and there's maybe like just one tracer or maybe like one person left, a diva or something, sometimes some members of your team will be very quick to run to the spawn, like the actual spawn doors, to try to spawn camp some people, but then like your Mercy will be left behind trying to deal with this mini diva, and it's like, guys, we're not getting percentage right now, and we're basically playing into their game. If our Mercy can't kill this diva on time, which that shouldn't be her job, thank God that she's doing it, but like, why is not one of our DPS or tanks helping her get rid of this? Now we're allowing them time for their Tracer to get back, for example. And now their Tracer is back. Now we have our Mercy fighting Mini Diva and Tracer. Maybe she can get rid of Mini Diva by some miracle, but now Tracer kills your Mercy, and suddenly you're like, wait, I thought we had won the team fight. Why is our Mercy dead? And why is that Tracer contesting a point and we haven't won this? And that is the easiest way to lose to that stall technique. Once you have secured the team fight, make sure that you stay around the point. And sure, you can send a few people up to secure the choke. Maybe a Winston with Primal Rage is a good choice to send up while everyone else stays back and controls. Mei is a great hero to block off the entrances without losing a hero off into the spawn. So just keep this in mind. You have to keep it under control. It's very easy for the defenders to get back and stall, and it's up to you to control that and make sure that you're forcing them out of the point as fast as possible, and you never let them get back the advantage on you. Let's talk a little bit about approaching the point, because I feel like that's kind of like the end part
once you're there.
Of the once you're there and you have won the team fight, that's kind of like what you're doing. But before that happens, let's talk about the approach of the map, because this can be one of the trickier points to approach, especially for newer players. My main advice before I throw it to you guys is, again, avoid the chokes as much as possible. And in this map, I actually encourage teams to spread out a little bit rather than all go in together. I think that going all in together in this last choke can be really hard, and it's very easy for the defending team to just get a random pick if all of you are just clustered together and going through the same door. I think that this is a point where it really favors your team spreading out a little bit, maybe sending a flanking Genji right side while your tanks go through the middle or through the left. Maybe have your Reaper start roaming the middle corridor as your tanks flank through the cave, etc. But it's also a matter of doing it at the same time, right? You don't want your Genji to engage too soon before your tanks are moving in. Basically, you you want to grab the attention of the team sort of at the same time, but from different angles. Because again, you don't want to play into the same choke spam kind of mentality thing. All right, I've said too much. Your guys' turn.
Okay, I think for as a defending player, it's easy to lose focus and lose some of your game sense as to where all the enemies are around the point. So if you see the team, if you're defending, if you see the team move to the dark corridor, you lose a lot of focus to that top left platform that the Widow is sitting on and stuff like that. And I think that's a big part of it. And like you said, like doing it at the same time. And personally, what I do in ladder specifically is I wait for my teammate to do it because I don't trust my teammates. So I'll wait for the engagement to start. I'll witness the enemies losing focus, and then I'll engage and try to do it at the same time. Pinch them because they're not focus firing. They're looking in different directions and stuff like that. So,
do you know how you would want to like approach this from a support's perspective? Because this is one of the hardest maps for me personally in the learning processes of playing on support, because a lot of times what you're going to see is the counter engagement before your team is willing to engage. A lot of times is going to just come out at you instead, because like they're spamming it down. Maybe somebody gets their ult before you do, and they get what we call initiative, which means they get the benefit of jumping in first. And sometimes that can basically just disrupt your team's jump altogether. So like I'll see like a Genji come out with a blade, or like a McCree will just walk up and flashbang kill your Tracer before you guys can even engage because she's on the other flank getting ready to go split. Or, easy example is people standing in front of the choke and Widowmaker gets a shot and lands it. So for me personally, it's really, really difficult when they do that and I'm playing, say, Zenyatta or Ana, because I want my tanks to go like main, and I'll sit behind them like way, way back at the main choke. And then my flankers will go in, and I have the freedom of just sitting back here with a Zenyatta and having the shooting gallery for both allies and enemies alike. But that's just one approach. I mean, there's so many different styles of play with Ana and Zenyatta in particular, especially if you're going to go frag Yatta, or if you're going to go like if you want to basically abuse a sight line into the dark room, because I've seen some Zens approach there as well. So what do you think for like support play here? Because it's a little bit more difficult, I think.
I think it really depends on your team specifically, the players on your team. If your team is pushing in, if your tanks are pushing in the way they should be, effectively holding W instead of standing at the choke, then playing with the team would probably be your best bet. But I think if your team is standing in the chokes too much, they're misplaying or they're just not committing, I think making riskier plays is better than just standing there and letting it happen. Especially as a support, you're really depending on, for engagements specifically, you're really depending on your team to start the engagement. But if you're playing someone like Ana, maybe try a little riskier play, but going away from the team just a little bit, taking another angle, trying to hit a sleep dart, or if you're Zenyatta, just try and charge up your alt click and try and get a pick that way. Or even talking in voice can help a lot, because I know a lot of players just won't say anything, but you'd be surprised at the amount of people where if you just speak up and say, "Hey guys, I think we should do this, and let's do it, let's try it," and the people will listen, and you guys will adapt and probably have a better chance at winning.
Yeah. As for supports, I have a couple of things to say, advice. As an attacker, when you're going in, one of the first things that you want to do as a team is make sure they're clearing the first part of the choke. So if there's anyone up top where we mentioned the defenders like setting up in that archway, or anyone right behind the choke, you want to make sure you push those people away using your tanks. If you're using a Zenyatta or an Ana, for example, it's generally easy once you've cleared that area and you've made sure that there's nobody roaming around, hopefully, to stand back a little bit and let your team push through. Let them be the ones to put the force in. Since you can still heal them from a distance, you can still be very effective if you stay just kind of like at the entrance while they push in. Eventually, though, once you see them secure, once you see them use their ultimate and stuff, you do want to move up and join up with them. If you're Mercy, having your team spread out a little bit and hopefully having heroes that are using some of the high ground actually gives you a ton of mobility. If your team is stuck in one segment of the map, you're kind of stuck with them and there's not a lot of places for you to go. You're very easy to focus. But if you got like a Pharah on the right side, you got a Genji coming down middle, you got your tanks on the left, you can maybe even approach with your tanks. When things get hairy, you can just fly to your Pharah, then you can fly to your Genji, etc. Mercy is actually quite a mobile hero in this map, same as Lucio. I think that for supports, Lucio can still be a great pick in this last point of Anubis because, again, he can help your team move up those chokes a little faster, and he's one of the supports that can go everywhere in this last point. It can be very, very hard to focus. So I think Mercy and Lucio can do really well. Zen and Ana have to be really careful. I think it's hard for them to approach the opponent immediately with the team. They almost are forced to stay a little back. But the only thing about staying back is that make sure you communicate to your team, to your McCree or to your Tracer, hey man, don't leave me too alone until we know I'm good, because in this point
or
is
the
very
supports
like
can just stick together sometimes.
yeah, or you can stick with your support and kind of like watch your back as well, because staying back by yourself can be very dangerous as well, right? Any Genji, Junkrat,
it's so easy to flank because of the verticality.
Right.
This map
exactly.
is flank town, so as a support, yeah, it can be very dangerous to fall behind by yourself, but it's generally the safest place for you if you know that that place is clear and your team is kind of watching out for you.
There's something that I wanted to highlight with what you brought up with Mercy beyond the verticality is just the sheer amount of Mercy's not using damage boost enough, which seems like such a simple mechanic, but like you would not believe how fast a point gets completely. It looks like people get vacuum kills, like they just don't exist anymore. It's like they're just taking out the trash. If you have a Roadhog ulting from one side or a Hanzo ulting, and you just give them the damage. Because the most effective defense against Roadhog and Hanzo ultimates is the high-level strategy of getting out of the way, right? So if you basically can give those heroes the benefit of the doubt that their setup when they initiate with those ultimates is beneficial, you basically want to jump on them as soon as you can with a damage boost, regardless of how high people's health bars are, by virtue of eliminating all of the damage altogether. And I won so many games, not just this season, but just like in other seasons on Anubis, attacking point B from damage boosting key ultimates in the fight. You don't have to have an insane ult advantage to win the fights. A lot of times you just need one. And that one thing to get 2 or 3 picks, it kind of sets you up for the whole snowball of the stall of the point. And even damage boosting Mei's freeze doesn't apply the freeze faster, but it does give her more damage while she's freezing, which is actually pretty good from what I was seeing. And who is the other hero? Oh yeah, just like jumping in and like coordinating with a Pharah can be absolutely devastating for enemy teams. Like just when she just walks into the corridor and then you get underneath where the health pack is and she jumps and you jump with her and you like left and right click spam back and forth with heals and damage, like those rockets do so much damage.
The damage is definitely underrated.
Oh yeah.
And that's an important thing when playing Mercy is knowing the positioning of your teammates and what abilities they have and such. Because if your McCree is in a position where you can really capitalize on something, damages to the McCree, or if you see your Genji has Blade, play around your Genji, damage boost the Genji, make sure he's pocketed. Yeah. And I think it's really underestimated. Like damage boost Blade is actually really strong, way stronger than people think. And it's not something that you see or hear very often. Like you hear Nano Blade. Everyone knows Nano Blade. Damage boost Blade, you don't really think about too often.
It just doesn't roll off the tongue as nicely,
Yeah, but it's super effective, and people don't
on terms.
No, I agree. Well, all right, this was a great discussion of Temple of Anubis, and I'm really glad that we got to do it. I had a super fun time doing it. The last thing I want to say about the map, though, as a special mention, and I'll let you guys go with special mentions as well, is from the attacker side, especially on point B, don't let yourself get staggered. This is one of the easiest points to make yourself get staggered, and it happens often in Temple of Anubis on both points. But point B is especially known for being stagger town because people play too close to the sun, man. If your tanks are dead and you're hanging around that wall on Temple of Anubis, it's so dangerous. If your tanks are dead and you know for a fact or for sure you're not engaging, the best thing you can do is go all the way back behind the second choke, like near point A, where the start of your spawn, basically. Just because I've seen too many teams waste so much time and lose this map because of the staggered. They get to do maybe like 2 or 3 good fights, and then the rest of the time they're all just roaming around like headless chickens, and it's just a silly way to lose a map, man. It's just so easy to correct. If you're the type of guy who feels like he needs to shoot at everything, every single point of the map, even though you don't have a shield in front of you and you're by yourself, really think about it, man, because you're gonna have a bad time.
And to add on that, it's I see a lot of the times where someone will already have their ult and they're still peeking and doing damage, and it's just it really comes down to risk and reward.
Right.
When you have ultimate, you're putting a high risk for very little reward. Like maybe you get a pick, but even if you get a pick, your whole team's not there. You can't really
capitalize on
engagement. Yeah, and if you already have your ult, there's really no point. You're not getting ult charge. If you get a pick, it's not as good as if you got a pick when your team was there. And it depends on the enemy composition and the hero you're playing. Like if you're playing someone safer where you can poke and do damage and get ult charge, then it could be viable if they don't have enough spam. If they don't have a lot of spam, you can get shots in there, you're getting close to your ult charge and whatnot. Then the risk is lower, the reward is higher, and it could be worth it. But most of the times it's
Right.
just not worth it.
Sometimes you don't have to be a hero, even though this game really encourages you to be one.
My final notes here is never underestimate the power of Reaper on this map. It's something that we haven't really been like flying in front of the face here of like the overall power, especially with how strong and how constant you see divas right nowadays. But like I've been seeing it a lot in Overwatch League in coordinated teams, and it doesn't really even speak to needing the coordination. You basically have 2 tanks walking to the point. It's like a terrible joke startup. 2 tanks walking to the point and Reaper walks into the room. Like the enemy team's gonna have a bad day, okay? Like you just walk in there, Winston D.Va jump your tanks, and you 2-shot Winston because you have a damage boosting Mercy behind you. It's so easy. Like you can basically just peel for people by sweeping up kills, and your shotguns and where the enemy team has room to defend while also contesting is within the optimal range for Reaper, Junkrat, Roadhog, and Mei. So that's why these heroes are going to excel in this tight quarters. They may not excel, each one of them may not excel in like medium distance spam, although, you know, some of them like Junkrat, Roadhog would, or Mei might, in like the side rooms or the flank routes. But you have to keep in mind these type of heroes are going to be really good. And if you're seeing them, yeah, I can count so many times that little alcove at the main choke where Reapers will just teleport up there and then just drop a Death Blossom and get a 5-6 kill because nobody's paying attention, like Andres was saying early on, just like checking to see if somebody's there. It's just like, you know, they'll do the what's up pose after they get a sextuple kill. So you got to be careful with stuff like that, and try not to, when you do 2 CP, like get frustrated with the ties and get frustrated with the things, but try to really crack the code with coordination and understanding the map setup more than trying to master your heroes. Because you can play a pretty lackluster hero on this map and really punish the enemy team just from the nature of them having strengths on this map beyond hero counters.
I think 2CP maps get a bad rep, but they can be very exciting maps. I just see sometimes people make way too many mistakes that can make these maps seem very annoying. Like, for example, when you already have control of point B and you're winning, but the defending team keeps stalling and you're unable to get the stall out of the way. Like sometimes, sure, if it's a hyper coordinated team like Soul Dynasty, sure, they can really stall a point for a long time. But for the latter, the majority of the time is people not paying attention to the right targets, not focusing the right people, not playing as a team and going off and doing things on their own, getting picked off at the wrong times, standing at the choke for too long. Little mistakes like this can make these maps super frustrating when they really don't have to be.
One thing I wanted to add is I think a big problem that people have is not giving up, but sort of giving up when you're attacking and you're capping the point and the enemies are staggering. I feel like players don't try hard enough. They wipe the team, they're capping the point, and they just stand around waiting for the enemies. I see that a lot, when in fact you kill the team, you know they're going to stagger because you just started capping the point. Work on your positioning, okay? Look at their roster as they're coming out. Like, oh, they swapped to a Tracer. And especially for a map like Anubis, specifically on Anubis Point B, you can hear what side they're going and what enemies they have. So you hear, oh, there's a Reinhardt coming to the left. Oh, I hear the Tracer blinking on the left. Oh, I hear the Lucio coming out left side. Communicate with your team that that's happening and position yourself accordingly. So maybe they've had a Reinhardt, hasn't used the Earth Shatter yet, probably has Earth Shatter. He's coming on the right side. So you should be thinking, okay, Reinhardt's coming on the right side. He might Earth Shatter. Let me position myself here. Let me communicate to that team. For me as Mei, I'd be like, okay, I'm thinking Ice Wall the Shatter, or just freeze him out of the spawn. Stuff like that, where that's something that people don't really think about is listening for the spawn doors, listening, because it's very easy to tell what hero it is just audibly. You don't even have to look at the roster. You can just hear them, and doing all those things, the positioning, hearing what heroes they have, playing around the abilities of their heroes, if they have ultimate. If you do all these things luckily you have a team that is doing these things, then it's so much easier to close off the point and clear out all the staggers and cap the point and win.
Absolutely. Wise words. The game is not over until those 3 ticks have been fully completed. And I'm sure that Koreans will attest to this many, many times as they pull out wins from Magic.
Yeah, that's very reminiscent of my soccer days and like talking with coaches of saying, you guys need to get control of the game and you need to finish. You'll see lots of games in the EPL, like English Premier League or like La Liga, like people playing at very high levels and teams playing extremely well and winning the game on paper.
Last second.
But they don't win the game because they can't finish the job. It's the same thing with a lot of the teams that you're going to be seeing in Overwatch League. They're getting 4-0'd. Like, it's because the games are always not like polar ends. They're not getting 4-0'd by like getting embarrassed. They're getting 4-0'd because they can't finish the job when it counts. And so you have to keep that in mind when you go into ranked, and try not to, this maybe will help you with some of your mentalities and your tilt, especially with 2CP. I know these maps tilt people off the face of the earth. Like I've seen people go offline for like weeks after a bad Anubis game. So keep that in mind. But we need to wrap up the show here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. The only thing I'm going to say about the show is news, because we want to close it out right now, is that Blizzard World is launching on the 23rd. So you guys can enjoy that next week. And they're saying that the loot boxes are coming on the same day. So there's new stuff for the loot boxes, new skins, new icons, new sprays, new emotes. And they're also showcasing like 1 or 2 new items a day on their Twitter. So you want to take advantage of that. Thanks so much for the people reviewing us on iTunes. iTunes is the best free way to support Omnic Lab. Beyond joining the community and listening to the show, you guys can leave us an iTunes review. We have 3 international reviews this week. Woo! So special thanks this week to you guys. We have iProoch from Spain. I think this is one of our very few Spain reviews.
Nice.
And shouted out a particular thankfulness for Andres for being able to pronounce some of the Spanish words. So special thanks to you. And
I got
we
you,
also
man.
have 2 Canadians. We have Rin V. Rin and Neil Distill from Canada, shouting us out for some kind words there on iTunes. Thank you guys so much. If you want to review the show, it does help us. As much as it sounds like odd that we include that every week, but it does help a ton. I won't belabor the point any more than I already have. If you guys want to support the show financially, patreon.com/OmnicLab is the best way to do that. I mentioned it at the top of the show, just mentioning it again. And we're also, Omnic Lab is an affiliate on Twitch. So we have one emote if you guys want to join there. And if you guys also want to follow us on our live stream, that's also a good way to do it. If you guys love the community, we have a large Discord over at discord.me/OmnicLab that doesn't work in Discord. You have to type it into your given browser, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, whatever. Just type it in there. You can join the clan, the group, whatever it is. You can try to group up, talk about discussions, talk about the shows, talk about esports, whatever it is there. We're always interacting with our listeners there. Anything else, go to the website, omniclab.com/links. Thank you guys so much. Again, Jardio, I'm going to kick it to you for your plugs. Thanks again for joining us on the episode. It's been great to have you back.
Yeah, thanks for hosting me. If you could drop a follow at twitch.tv/Jardio. I stream there every day. May play, hit scan, top 500.
Walling off noobs.
You got it all. You got it all.
All right, Andres, what about you?
If you want to find me, you can look me up on Twitter at iPlayGames. You spell that IPLAI Games. And you can also find me on our sister show, The Owl Recap, where we are covering everything from news, matches, and results for the Overwatch League. You can go to theowlrecap.com and find all of the stuff there. We're also on iTunes, Spotify. We're now on the Google Store. We are on Stitcher. I know that a lot of you have been very vocal about getting me to be on all of the platforms. Here we are now, guys. We are on all of the platforms. If there is one that we're missing, please let me know. I'm like really working hard to be on everything.
We're actually made an application to see if Spotify would take us into theirs because we don't have the same setup on our hosting on this show as we do on Owl Recap, but let it be known we're trying to get on Spotify. It's not as easy as it sounds if your hosting is not,
There's a lot of platforms out there, guys. There's a lot of platforms. I haven't even heard about some of them. And some of you are like, why are you guys not over here? I'm like, I didn't even know it existed.
If you guys want to find me, I'm on Twitter and Instagram with the tag NotRob. If you like Twitch, I sometimes stream at NotRobMay on Twitch. And if you like Hearthstone, head over to Velen's Chosen Podcast or VelensChosen.com. And I have a concept craft show, which is just a personal musings thing. I'm actually looking to do another episode this week on some tips on just like doing productions and trying to start your own show and like what things to look for and on the back end. So I really appreciate you guys listening to Omnic Lab at episode 87. Please give us some feedback. This is our first step into the map mastery, and we want to know if this is something you want us to continue. We warned you that this is going to be a lot different than a lot of other mediums out there because we don't have the visuals of the map. It's really difficult, as I'm sure our first guest, Jardio, had some issues like communicating with me sometimes on the show, and I had some issues like, I don't know where this thing is. So it's really hard. We're trying to make it happen for you guys. I even put a link in the description of the show notes if you want to see Skyline's video on this map mastery. It's a little old, but it's still good. An oldie but a goodie. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next week. Don't be a lab rat. Be a scientist. We'll see you. Bye.
Thanks to everyone in the chat. You guys are awesome like always. And Callaghan, Overwatch. He was very active. Thanks, man.
Jardio, thanks for the host.
No problem.
We do appreciate all of the questions. Sometimes we can't answer all of them during the show, but they do help guide the conversation in some form or another sometimes. So feel free to always pose the questions. We are reading them even if we don't necessarily address them, because sometimes if we do, the show will go on for about 3 hours. That's the main reason we don't do it. Peace.